So, welcome to another Thursday on the Pagan Perspective. I'm your host, Yucca. And this week we've been talking about inner self and inner energies. So our topic is below in the description box, but I'm going to also go ahead and read it to you. It comes from Levi Lockwood, and they ask, I just got done watching a video where Dancing Rabbit mentioned getting closer to his younger self. And that got me thinking, how would you define your inner self? Is it young and passionate, or is it ancient and wise? How do those things relate and feed off from one another, if at all? As pagans, you all utilize the concept of energy to some degree. So what would your personal energy reservoir look like or feel? And what are the characteristics of its gatekeeper, aka inner self, inner child, natural self, collective unconscious, carnal self, or whatever else you want to call it? I understand this is a bit of an abstract question. Have fun with it. So thank you. Actually, I really love this question. This seems like it's going to be really fun. Let's see. As always, how to structure it, how to cover it. But I definitely work with images of my inner self, or bits and pieces of me, and I had to kind of give a little bit of thought of how much of that I was going to be comfortable sharing in such a public forum like this is. So I'm going to not go into a lot of details on things, but be a little bit vague, but I still really would like to share with you guys a little bit of what we're talking about in this question. So in terms of my inner self, I use visualization a lot. Examples of some of kind of what I do is on my personal channel. I have the Pagan Guided Meditation series, which I have a whole bunch more recorded that I need to edit and actually put up for you guys. But what I do in those is very similar to how I actually visualize within myself. So myself, I have multiple different characters that I think of that are myself, like my inner child character, who is me at about the age of 4 or 5, kindergartner age, with chocolate smeared all over my face, happy as can be, super freckly. I used to be way more freckly than I am now. Running around barefoot with matted hair. There's that person who sometimes I need to talk to. Sometimes I need to be that person, and I'll have conversations, inner conversations. I'll go ahead and visualize and put myself into a sacred space to do that. Or sometimes they might be just short, quick little conversations that I don't take time out of the day to create special space for. So I'll have characters like that. There's also my warrior self, kind of a very Boudica inspired, warrior woman with the long braids and dreaded hair and painted blue face, and that's also legitimately me, and she's a part of me. There's a lot of other ones I could go into, but I also sometimes see my inner self as landscapes. And sometimes I explore my inner self by visually going through kind of a path working or trance state or something like that, whatever you want to call it, to visually travel through myself. And what comes up in those path working, or whatever you want to call it, tells me a lot about myself, because I believe that it opens me up to communicate more deeply, or with a different part of myself that has a harder time communicating with this incredibly analytical, word-heavy part of myself, which is where I normally live, being someone very interested in academic pursuits and all kinds of things like that. I'm normally here, and I have to take the time out to go and visit those other parts of me, be them other characters or landscapes. And sometimes I will be one of those characters, like the childlike little Arwen with the chocolate all over her face, or the warrior, or the old woman. Sometimes I am this little old woman who looks an awful lot like my grandmother, you know, with the really strong accent and all of that. And sometimes the character will travel through the land, and sometimes there'll be characters interacting, and kind of I go back and forth between who I am, sort of in a dream state. I don't know if you ever have this, where a character in a dream is simultaneously one person and another person and another person and you, right? So it's a lot like that. Let me see about the rest of the question, because I don't want to miss any parts of it. So are they young, passionate, ancient, wise? Yes and no to all of them, because I see it as different parts of myself in a way that I can talk and communicate and recognize those different parts. You know, there's a couple of them that are very wounded and very hurt and need attention and need healing, and parts of myself that I've neglected and left out, and you know, with time, hopefully I'll be able to address those parts. So how did they relate and feed off? I think I kind of touched on that in terms of I visualized that, but I think that my visualization is a way for me to interpret and understand what's going on, and I think that that's probably going on whether I come up with a way to understand it or not, and to influence it or not. I think it's still probably happening. I like being able to influence it though. So in terms of using the concept of energy to some degree, what does my personal energy reservoir look like? And this was the part that I was a little bit hesitant about how much I wanted to share with you guys. But I think I'm comfortable saying that for me, when I talk about kind of that, when I need personal power, when it's really hard, when I'm dealing with really heavy stuff, that reservoir that I go to is in a desert. It's often night, sometimes it's day, and it's more of a not really a real desert, not like the desert that I'm from in the Southwest. It's kind of more like one of those what you see in a fantasy movie kind of desert, a low desert, more similar to some of what is in like Northern Africa or parts of the Middle East. And there's a well, like a natural cave, rock well, kind of somewhere in between, that it was probably there, and then extra rocks and walls were built around it, down in the ground, and it's filled with cool water. And for me, when I really need to go to that place of getting energy, I go to that well. But I also think about energy, and we're using energy in this really kind of vague way. But I also think about it in terms of just being, when I'm conscious of it, I visualize it as light, as a colored light. And I think very recently we were talking about it coming from physical locations as well. So, and the gatekeeper is me, but in other videos we've also talked about, I've done a little bit of shamanic journeying, and I do have spirit animals, I guess is what they're, guides. And my interpretation of this, people have very different interpretations. I interpret them as being parts of me. That some people see that as its actual other entities that they visit or see or communicate with. I see it as me, but I was still taught not to really talk about those specific animals. You're not really supposed to brag about them or show off about them, because you're told that they'll leave you if you do. But I think enough just to say that the guardian there is a rat. I won't say too much more about that other than in a very positive way. So yeah, I mean, you know, this was just sort of asking us to share a little abstractly about what it is, and I really love this question because it really, I mean, everybody, I haven't watched the other hosts' videos, of course, but it really kind of touches on the way that I like to see and interpret, because I'm a very visual, I do a lot of visualization, and so that being able to share that a little bit is kind of fun. So I hope that that was interesting and useful to you in some way. I know that's not really, this isn't one of those like teaching or look at all this research, but more sort of like a share our personal experiences kind of video. But yeah, so you guys who are watching, is this something similar to what you do? Do you have any experience or comments that you'd like to share with us below? And I hope you guys have a wonderful week. So take care.